Thank you for coming today. Welcome to Urbana University. And today our presenter is Dr. James Burnett, who is a professor of sociology here at Urbana University for 2.5 years now. And this will be the fourth in the series about at-risk youth. So here is Dr. Burnett.
Thank you for coming today. Today is a really special treat because this is kind of different. We've been looking at theory, we've been looking at strategies that are more inside the norm. This strategy is outside the norm, and it's called using myths and stories to help at-risk youth. So, still got the same goals, designed to inform you of ways to help youth who are stumbling through their personal journey and without guidance and living in chaos. But this is kind of different. We define chaotic living with an undirected force in a state of confusion and being unaware of your surroundings, but within yourself, you have a seed of potential. So what we're presenting is that myth and stories can provide a roadmap to assist youth in navigating their way through life. Now that's different for somebody who's not English or a communication major, but we found that in social sciences, myth has provided a thread that can help guide these young people out of despair by connecting them with a purpose larger than themselves. It's almost like myth provides invisible helpers that are connected with this force that is connected to the youth and their gift that is inside them. Now, it's important to help young people find their purpose in life and what we talked about in the last workshop, individuation. Now, this involves taking them through a positive life-changing strategies and a process of growth and nurturing their self-image and self-esteem and developing hope for the future. Now, you remember in the last workshop, we talked about the importance of identity. If you can kick that identity habit and have the youth with a positive, strong identity of themselves and get them on the path, on the journey where it's about the journey and not the destination, then you're halfway home. So we use this strategy of discussing and interpreting fairy tales and myths and identifying themes that help them become heroes within their own story. Now that is, if we can just get them there, to realize that you're writing your story and it's unfolding and you're the hero in your own story, so that if you're going through trials and tribulations and hardships and then you overcome, then that's a natural development, that's a victory, and then you're building on to your own story. So through storytelling, young people are assisted in social and psychological development, thereby increasing their capacity to succeed, learn, and grow. And they find meaning in these stories that are congruent to how their minds and understandings are developed so that they can develop a healthy connection to their present life. So, this bridge is almost representative of what a young person is going through as they go through these rites of passage or formal initiation where the stories help them and grow in a positive direction. But just like this bridge is unknown. So the destination is really unknown, but that's the kind of way to get them to keep on moving forward in the hopes that will be able to extract the golden potential within, like we talked about, Alchemy Inc. was doing, extracting the gold within. So we already know that there's gold in them thar hills. And so we got to get into the inner mountain of them hills and extract the gold so that they can really see, hey, I'm worth something. There is gold in me. There is something that's good. And that's because most exposure that they receive is to what we call in sociology the middle class measuring rod. So it's these norms that, that they are exposed to and they are expected to develop in school and church and etc. Nothing wrong with that, but it's not going to reach anyone. So that we begin to look for myth and common things in myth where they can learn. So there's 3 important components that we're seeking. First is productivity. We want to develop positive outside interest in skills. Next, the ability to connect. We want them to form relationships and connection to something larger than themselves. The missing piece is that connection. If they can connect to something that's outside of themselves and larger than themselves, and they can see that they're a part of that, that's half the battle. And then we want them to be able to navigate, in other words, living in multiple worlds with a safe course charted that include responsible decision-making in an unfair, unjust world. Am I saying that the world is unfair and unjust? I don't know. But if they perceive it unfair and unjust, it's part of their reality. So, the truth is that most young people are wounded in some form or another, and their wounds affect their stance and their movement in life. But if these wounds go undiscovered, they will continue to travel in life unaware of the damage that they're causing to themselves and others. One of my favorite shows is called Intervention. And when you watch it, you see that there are threads that go back to some incident or significant emotional event that happened in childhood. And when you deal with that issue, well, first you got to get them to agree to come to treatment. They kind of do an intervention and mob up on them. But once they get the treatment and they deal with that issue, I don't know, they just seem to get it. So we have undiscovered wounds where people are not even telling them that they have these wounds, and they think something is wrong with them. However, a strategy to deal with the wounds is to give the wounds a voice. For example, building a genuine community of young people around a place to give their wounds a voice and allowing them to discuss myths and stories in a positive environment. Now, I don't want to put you on the spot, Kathy, but you right up front. Now, so did you see a community center in Akron? Can you kind of share that with us?
I will. I was invited, and my daughter and a couple of her friends, we went up to Akron, and there was a presentation on the youth of Akron, I believe. And what was the name?
Alchemy.
Alchemy. And we did run a little late, so we were in on the process of storytelling that was led by the Mr. Mead. Yes, and then the children, the youth, did share poems that were written by themselves. And the way I understood the poems, there were progressions of poems. So some of the children or young adults and kids, they wrote poems when they first must have entered the program, and then as they progressed, so you could see growth in their poems. It was really interesting in their life.
Those poems, what did you say there? What?
In their life, yeah.
Hello, Hillary. Can I put you on the spot? Springfield a year ago. Can you talk about that?
I did some tutoring there. They had like a government paid program, where they would stay after school and they would give them dinner and stuff like that. So I just did a lot of work with students that were at risk there too. They were probably, like, I think in 4th grade. So it was good to see how much they improved.
Common denominator. Genuine community. I met the guy in Akron in 2008 when he was helping me with my dissertation. I was in Minnesota, going to school in South Dakota, teaching in Minnesota. But he was in Ohio, and he gave me the foundation for the program that I developed in Minnesota, the program that I developed in Idaho, and then the program that I'm now doing in Ohio. And our students, you know, they learn sociology, social theory, and social deviance and things like that, and then they go out into the field to these programs. But the common denominator, building community. Short story. So, me and my son went up there, you guys went up there. Fast forward to Monday, they got like 2 minutes, excuse me, 2 minutes, I'm getting excited. 2 minutes before track practice starts. So, one of the gentlemen from your group came up to my son and said, yeah, Akron, And my son was like caught by surprise, but then he had to go to the 9th grade track practice. And my son is 11th grade, so they separate. So the whole time my son is wondering, how did he know that I was in Akron, right? And then so I got home, I did the Monday brown bag, and I got home and I told my son, yeah, you know, the people that I told about, yeah, they showed up. And it made the connection. The guy who was on the 9th grade track team was in Akron at the same time we was in Akron. We missed each other, but then they made the connection because they both know that they were there. Huge! The meaning, the look on my son's face, you know, that he was part of something, right? That he was connected with the 9th grader, not even by track, not the fact that they were both Urbana high school athletes, but they had both made this Akron connection. And so I purpose in my mind that I need to sacrifice. I need to start giving so that these young people can see that the hero is rewarded in the end in proportion to the sacrifice they made. In other words, they sacrifice today, then tomorrow the payoff will be realized. So my son, he just probably went because I asked him to go, right? But then now he see a role that he can play because I've been trying to tell him that there's people at your high school that don't have their dads. They don't have the experiences that you have. And you can be like a conduit between me and them in that I don't understand this Twixter or all this modern, but he showed me how to follow all that stuff, you know? So he can play a role and we can build community. It's so real. It is real that when I get out of the way and let that thing unfold, it unfolds. So another strategy is help young people in preserving courage. Teach them to never give up despite the obstacles in their way and the odds against them. They must embrace and incorporate perseverance and not give up with the first sign of disruption, because we've seen how sacred space is. You're going to have relapses. You're going to get off that horse. You're going to get back on that horse. It's a process. And it's not always going to be a pretty process. I was told, Ryan Inlow, he said, oh, politics is like watching sausage being made. It's not pretty. And that's how this inner work situation goes, you know. But you got to persevere. When you learn to consider long-term consequences, the youth, and help them, then they will accomplish what they need to. Also, they must be taught to use resources in order to accomplish goals. It may take time before they achieve their mission, but no matter what, they will persevere. Rome wasn't built in a day. It's going to be stress. It's going to be losses. but it's going to be gains also. So, the decisions that young people make follow them throughout their lives. It is as if they stand at a fork of the road where they may decide which direction to take, and reaching the crossroads means that they have reached a significant point in life. Sometimes fate plays a role in their decisions, and other times they must go with their true, authentic self. Sometimes due to circumstances, some decisions might be forced sooner than is appropriate. For example, suffering from mistakes made in the past that is beyond their control. In the end, however, the ability to make good decisions is a victory. And we talked about this in the second workshop. In between stimulus and response is a space. For example, if I hit, I'm off non-violence. If Peter hit, Peter hits Joy, and Joy hits him back, stimulus, response. But if Peter hit Joy, Joy takes that space to think about the choices that he made. In that space lies the freedom to choose, and if he makes the right choice, then maybe he may forgive him, maybe he may not hit him back, maybe he may ask him why. But in between stimulus and response is a space, and in that space lays your freedom. So, people that begin to go on this journey, begin to make good decisions and have good and positive outcomes. Now, another important lesson that young people learn is you cannot have trust without the possibility of betrayal. And that's the thing. We talked about the Color Line book. Betrayal. But whatever, Big Mama, I always talk about Big Mama. She was about 6'1". I think my daughter got her height from Big Mama. Anyway, she's my grandmother. And she used to have these wise sayings, But she said, whatever don't kill you, make you stronger. But she couldn't pronounce her T's, so she said stronger. But whatever don't kill you, make you stronger, and you can put another notch on the belt, and you can make it through. So it's going to be betrayal. And people go in naively, but you need to let them know the reality is that sometimes there's a necessary betrayal for you to be able to learn the lesson. And each contain elements of each other, that trust and betrayal. Due to the past with hating, jealousy, envy, they do not hand trust over easily. So, but through these stories and myths that contains acts of betrayals, it is possible for the young people to come to see the nature of betrayal and prepare themselves for this painful event. I still have pain I don't want to tell my age, but you can tell that grade. But I still have pain and loss and grief. You live long enough, you'll have it. So we piggyback with a story on loss and acceptance, and then we discuss how to get there from here, and sometimes we help them go through the mourning process. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross talks about the steps that you have to deal with grief and loss. And it's just not sometimes with death of a human. Sometimes it's a loss of a job, or divorce, or losing your best friend when you move away. So there's a 3-step process of coming to terms with betrayal. First, acknowledge it. Next, not wallowing in self-blame and encountering the situation in a new creative way. The act of betrayal helps the young people to understand their self and life. In other words, within all bad, there is some good. As with all good, there's a tint of sorrow. So this idea of teaching them that there's betrayal in life can be taught through myth. Myths and stories can also assist young people on their journey, but us, the helpers, must decode the language of myth, symbolic interpretation of the wisdom in the story that can help guide them along the story. And I might as well tell the story, I'm going to tell it later so you can really see how you got to decode the meaning. But the good thing about stories, whether as far as instead of PowerPoints or lessons, but the good things about stories is in the story is a storehouse of resources for what you need. How you see the story, Hillary, may be different from the director, CEO of the great YMCA sitting next to you. Community treasure it is, isn't it? But that's not what we're here for anyway. But how you see the story and what you need to get out of the story is different from what you need. And that's the good thing about it. Now, they can help young people remove themselves from their present and view life from an objective viewpoint, and they have the ability to provide distance and barriers from their present through the use of symbols that stand for whatever the client can envision. For example, I'm lost in the story that we read. I mean, I'm there. I can escape, my wife dishes, I can go to my book, and I'm going back to the 30s or the 40s, whenever it was in Indiana, Virginia. I'm him. I can escape. And so we help these young people and analyze and discuss the stories and develop critical thinking skills that allow them to uncover common things that will help them to navigate the meaning and development in their lives. And the key is to provide them with ample opportunity to discuss the story. So what we're going to do is I'm going to ask individuals, you don't have to read. To read, we're going to tell a story now, and I'm going to ask individuals to read or pass or whatever to start the story. Sir?
Once upon a time, in another time, in another place, in a small village, in a simple hut, there was a man named Isaac. Isaac lived a simple, complicated life without very many needs. He accepted what the day would bring to him, but it happened that at night, Isaac had a dream. The dream, a voice spoke directly to him, saying, Isaac, it is time to go to a distant city and to the center of that city to a bridge, where you will find at the base of the bridge some ground, and you need to begin digging in that ground. If you do this, you will find a great treasure.
Good, thanks.
However, the next night, Isaac had the same dream, telling him to go to that distant city to find the center, the bridge. Got to the base of the bridge and began digging once again. However, since the dream had come back, he mentioned it to some friends, but they said, a dream is just a dream. So Isaac went back to the living as he had been living. Then it happened that the dream came back a third time, and Isaac woke up and left everything he knew behind. The hut he had been living in, the village and the people, his work, his cares, and everything, and began walking along the road of the village toward the great city shown in the dream.
Isaac woke up and thought it was just a dream. Isaac walked day and night, for it was a long way to go, and he had only his feet to carry him. It happened that after walking for a long distance, he walked through the soles of his shoes, so that pretty soon Isaac was walking barefoot. It happened that he was walking. The winds would blow, and it would lift the dust of the earth, so his clothes became covered with dust, and he began to wear through his clothes, so that Isaac was looking like a pretty strange person walking barefoot in tattered clothes along the road that he was traveling on.
nonetheless, he finally arrived at the city that was mentioned in the dream.
At that point, Isaac entered the city and went straight to the center of the city and went straight to the castle that was within sight. When Isaac went toward the bridge, he wanted to go to the base to begin digging, but he saw before him guards digging the bridge, and he realized that it would be unlikely that they would allow him to go down and dig at the base of the bridge. Not knowing what else to do, Isaac began to pace back and forth in front of the bridge day and night, looking at it in his tattered clothes and bare feet. After a time, the captain of the guard came to Isaac and said, "Listen, I've seen you walking here with this anxious look on your face, and I wondered what has happened to you."
Isaac said, "What has happened to me is that I had a dream 3 times that told me to come to this bridge and go to its base and to begin digging, and that I would find this treasure, but I am afraid to go there because of you and all of the guards." The captain said to Isaac, "You know, at your age, a person usually knows better, and I'm surprised to find you acting in such a foolish way as to be following a dream. Everyone knows that dreams don't mean anything."
For instance, last night I myself had a dream, and in the dream it said that a person named Isaac would come to me, and if that person named Isaac knew enough to go back to the village where he grew up and back to the hut where he had lived in, and if he went to the hearth that was in the back of the hut, he would find some loose bricks, and if he loosened those bricks, he would find a tremendous treasure right there in the place he had just came from. Isaac simply said, "Thank you very much."
He turned around and began to walk back towards the place he began at. Isaac walked back to the village of his birth, to his little hut. It took him a long time, so much time had gone by that his clothes were back in fashion. Isaac found his way back and went directly to the hut where he had been living. Went to the hearth in the back of the hut, and sure enough, there were some loose bricks.
He pulled them out as the dream of the captain had suggested, and there he found in his own heart a great treasure. And he took that treasure and built a grand home out of stone. He built a hall inside to invite his friends and neighbors in, and when they came, Isaac would ask if they had any dreams. They would tell their dreams, and Isaac would sit with them and talk over their dreams. People began to make their journeys not based on promises, but based on dreams. Isaac's dream had led him to become a keeper of dreams and an interpreter of dreams.
So, any volunteers could just kind of reflect or see what they saw in that story? A theme or any.
Follow your dreams.
What does that mean to you?
That means if you have something you really are wanting to do, you should make steps to do that.
Okay, so before you worked with the children that you work with, did you do something different? Did you ever do anything similar? Or was this a radical change in what you were doing as a calling to where, hey, this is my dream, I'm going for it?
It's a very long time ago when I started working with children.
So go back to that moment. What made you decide, because you've been doing it for a while,
Very long time.
so was it a dream of yours? Or?
I think I was actually in college when I decided that I was best suited for working with children. I was actually a psychology degree at the time, and I decided to switch over to special needs education. And I think it was just through learning about the world around me more that I decided that that's what I was being called to do. So,
Does it satisfy you?
yes.
Anybody else get anything out of it?
You know, I was kind of surprised that he did what the captain said, like, because the captain said that he had a dream that said Isaac was supposed to go back, and I thought he was going to say, no, I'm not supposed to do that, but
Well, but in the dream, in the captain's dream, he did say that someone named Isaac would come along, and let's face it, if that happened to anybody today, if they came to you and said, well, I had a dream that Susie was gonna come and say something to me, and you came and said that to me, I'd probably have a stroke.
Probably listen.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of, if he believed enough in his dream to do that, why wouldn't he believe the dream that the captain had?
Anybody else?
One thing that I picked up on was throughout the story, he has a dream and he knows what he wants to do, but whoever he encounters, they're kind of against his dream and they make it hard for him. His friends in the beginning think he's crazy, and then the guard just kind of tells him to go away. But sometimes we accomplish our dreams through people who don't want to see us succeed.
That's absolutely true. Anybody else?
I think that the persistence of the dream, it came back 3 separate nights before he acted upon it. So it doesn't die down, it can persist.
And in the end, he gave back and told other people to follow their dreams instead.
Hey, as a matter of fact, I think you were in cultural anthropology and you wrote something about wanting to, your experience from your friend that worked in Springfield, that worked at this program with youth and all this and that. Is that how we kind of, you got to be persistent. But check this out. Dreams expose the conditions we are in, and to follow a dream is to become exposed. And to become exposed, hey, you gotta once you gotta expose, you gotta make a move. You gotta do it or get off the pot. It kind of forces you into pursuing what we call your authentic path or your authentic self. And that's what happens to a lot of these at-risk students. So, at-risk youth. So in Minnesota and Idaho, what happened is, so then they go on a journey, they go on a path, and then they end up going from probation to becoming a student. We seen, I think in one of the workshops where we got feedback from the students and they were like, 3 years I hadn't taken any GED test, 6 months in the program, now I'm a freshman. And it happens. It was so real. Were you shocked when you seen that quote from that one student that was talking about that? Can you talk about that? Because you were there. You seen, of course I can't prove that he said that, but assuming that he did.
Well, I think that from what I took from the reading that was on the wall here a few weeks back, or last week, I think he realized that I believe he connected with somebody, or somebody's, and he felt that he had a mission to accomplish, and there were people that believed in him, so he believed in himself. That's how because really, even for an adult, that's a lot of leaps and bounds. So, for youth, there had to be some sort of, direction and people that were rooting him on as he rooted on himself.
So what has happened in the past is that they, offer probation, they pay off their fines, they're in good standing, and then they actually end up the transition to a program where they actually become students. So then once you become a student, no longer are you in the world of probation and parole, etc. You're a productive citizen with responsibility. So stories and students, I differentiate between stories and at-risk youth. You might still be an at-risk youth, but you've taken on a new identity, that of a student. So what I do is show and talk about student growth through stories. So stories move people from an abstract to a concrete and back and forth by creating a context within where students can access meaning, create new stories, new ways of looking at data, and alternative approaches to the truth. So we talked about in another previous workshop how we deconstruct this meaning or the way we see something, and then we can able to reconstruct our own interpretation. So in other words, I'm deconstructing my role as an at-risk parole probationer, and now I'm reconstructing my role and responsibilities as a student, and then what I used to do in the old, I chopped that off. That's no longer true. Then I'm on a path to something new. And stories can do that. Students can be encouraged to tell their own stories through self-reflexivity, relate their personal histories, and evaluate multiple perspectives to draw, evaluate, and attach meanings to subjects that will have them invested in their own learning. So, because I do have that past, and we're studying social problems, hey, I can expose myself a little bit, the fact that I overcame that, and then begin to tell my story, because who knows if it's in a class discussion, as long as I keep it clean and keep it truthful and honest and use the correct verbiage, somebody could learn from that. Next, I'm so used to you doing this for me. I got this clicker, I can do it myself. Stories show students that there are many possible ways of interpreting a particular state of mind. In interpersonal success, one person's crisis may be another person's opportunity. And you never know when, you reflex it, self-reflexivity, and then you go into self-disclosure a little bit without, putting yourself at risk to where you are comfortable with explaining yourself, your story, your example, and you never know. Your story could be the freedom to somebody else who's been bound up. And oh, this has probably only happened to me, and I feel bad, and my self-esteem is low, and I'm not a person with bad behavior, I'm a bad person. So I take on that identity. And your story, or your sharing of your story, could be the camel that broke the straw that, well, how'd it go? The straw that breaks the camel back. And that's real, and you never know how life can use you. Students need to understand that there is both risk and benefit in these undertakings. There are narrative threads that make life understandable because themes get woven together to form the story, just like the story that we've written. Oh, it's so much in there. I can't wait. I'll probably have to read it twice, because I can't highlight. I like to highlight very important, and this is a little library long. You can't read it. But it's so much in there, interwoven, so then I can introduce discussion questions. And who knows who is experiencing that? Create group opportunities for students to share stories and to help discover their similarities in their own narratives of meaning that strengthen virtues and empathy and compassion. We do discussion as a large group, but then we also break down in our individual groups. Did you had that? Did you find that when you broke down in your individual groups that more people are apt to discuss and be open than with the larger group?
Yeah.
How was that? How did that work for you?
I just think that people are more comfortable if you're in a group of, 10 or less people compared to the whole class of 40 people or whoever's in there.
And, there's opportunities to share their own narratives and the meanings, strengthen virtues of empathy and compassion. Is that why we go into social service? I mean, we're not trying to, do a bank loan here, for God's sake. We're trying to help people, right? So we're supposed to be developing empathy and compassion. And so these stories are a way to do that. Ask students to identify, this is a really good thing. I ask students to identify 4 to 5 most significant moments in their lives, the moments that shaped who they are, what they believe, how they think, and what they value. Then I ask them to name how they see themselves currently and who they hope to be in the future. Powerful. Powerful. And this is like written journal exercises. I call them journal exercises. And you give an opportunity, because I'm the only one that can see it, and then it goes into their portfolio, so it ends up back in their hands anyway, so they can be honest, for that period of time. I receive the work, I give feedback, and then students begin to understand who they are now and who they hope to become is a function of how they interpret where they have been and what they have experienced. Powerful. Very powerful. Human beings live in stories about reality as much as they live in reality itself. Narrative truth matters in a sense that stories we construct turn around and construct us, and we them for as long as we live. If students can create transformative stories of meanings, they have the power to change their lives. Students live in multi-story with a variety of interpretations, which provide them with resources to re-narrativize a story of meaning that may be dysfunctional, harmful, and self-destructive, but the lessons that you learn from that, priceless. So we live in stories of two meanings that have two sides, thin and thick descriptions. Thin stories stem from living unexamined lives, lack of depth, lack of understanding, and complexity. Others often create thin stories for us because they have the power and influence over us. Students then frantically search for meaning, whereas thick stories are rich stories of meaning and are often alternative stories that enable us to see more than one side of meanings that we've created. As we meet key people, experience events, and have new insights, we deepen our meaning narratives. We are encouraged to find the will to refuse to cling to older narratives of meaning that no longer define or benefit us. We were living in Idaho, met a guy from California that was part of this women's movement that I was part of. So I wanted to turn my dissertation into a book. My dissertation was with students, but the book I wanted was to work with prisoners. So I wrote it all, academic and fully functional with resources and citations and the correct theory, and then I sent it all excited to God in California, and he said, you got to go back to the drawing board. You need to write a narrative. And then I got the job at Urbana, and my wife and my family still lived in Idaho, so I got a one-bedroom apartment in back of McDonald's, and I spent the whole semester rewriting the story. So the guy from California found out, we still talk, so he found out that Urbana was near Logan County. And so he had a buddy that was from there whose wife was a psychologist, and this guy was a poet and an author. So he sent him my stuff, and I would send him, just chapters and, oh, you need to do this, give more of yourself, hurt, take pain, tell your story, And so it went from this academic piece to a narrative. And, it's not on the New York Times bestseller or anything, but, I was more pleased with it. So we are not reducible to the meaning stories we live, but we are responsible for creating and recording stories of meaning that guide us beyond problems that plague us. The deal is that we're trying to get them to get on the other side of the problem so that they can quit being part of the problem and become part of the solution. So we are able to deconstruct stories of meaning that cause problems of guilt, anxiety, defeatism, addiction, alienation by examining background assumptions that make meaning narratives dysfunctional, and self-destructive. We must bring to the surface, taking for granted explanations of behavior that keep us fearful, disempowered, and obsessive. How many people know that even though the people have overcome probation and parole problems with addiction, defeated anxiety, and they become a student, that there's still the potential for those problems? Just because we become a student don't mean that the problems cease to exist. But what we want to do is deconstruct those old narratives, shake things up, remember the connections, and recreate narratives of meaning by changing our communities of significance. So the goal is to help students create a new sense of purpose. Questions?
Not so much a question as I was thinking about the motorcycle gangs in Waco that had the shootout. And those are grown men, like the youngest one was like not 25 or something like that, and the oldest one was 67. And it strikes me that they are living a story that they've created for themselves, that this, whatever the name of the one, the Banditos, and the other one is the Cossacks, and they have this whole story constructed for themselves about how important this group is. And then on the one hand, it seems so silly to me. I'm like, why would you shoot each other in the parking lot of a restaurant? You know, it's beyond my comprehension. But on the other hand, it's a story that they've devised for themselves, whereby shooting those other people is like part of the drama, part of the stuff that they need to do somehow. But my question then is, how do you intervene in that? I mean, clearly it's easier to do it with people who are younger, I would think, and not so entrenched in that story.
So the deal is they dying for their colors.
Yeah.
So if they don't have a ritual death to go through, they're going to do a physical death. So a ritual death is an initiation process when you die to the old and you start and you become new. But if you don't have systems set up for that ritual death, you'll go down the wrong path and go through a physical death, which does not have to happen. If you have a program set up where you go through this rites of passage and you symbolically die, then you don't have to find solace in a group that pushes real death and destruction. So, this deconstruction of the old physical death and reconstruction of a ritual death is the story that unfolds. Forget about it. I mean, to know and to have this knowledge and to see grown men playing that out when they don't really have to, hurts me.
Yeah, that's what I thought too. Do you think that there has to be, within each one of those individual people, in this example, there has to be a moment when they say, something is wrong here. And then there has to be somebody who's waiting to catch them at that very moment.
When the student is ready, the teacher will come. So let's say that one of them don't die. He gets charged and goes to prison for 2 to 5. Well, he meets the chaplain and he sees before him his life and the choices that he made and where he is now. And he has a significant emotional event to where he decides that, hey, I don't want to do this anymore. So even at this age that he is, when he gets out, he swears off allegiance to that, and then all of a sudden, like he's on the hero's journey, allies come to take him down the new path. But how many people miss that chance?
Yeah. Well, it does seem like it'd be a whole lot easier to do it with kids before they ever get that far. Because they're more impressionable to be at that age.
Anybody other questions?
It was interesting listening to Susie relay the recent news about all the gangs in Waco, but I guess the rhetorical question that I'm asking myself is why does it have to get to the point in time of a severe crisis, life or death, before you make a decision to reflect back upon the stories that you're telling yourself?
Yeah.
And we get caught up in our own stories so much that we're not, we're not the person observing a tree that's in the many trees in the big forest. We're the person whose face is shoved up against the bark and we can't see anything. And, how do you do that as proactively as possible so that you reach people before they destroy themselves and others?
Yeah,
That is a good question.
good question.
But guess what? As I exposed you, and in your job, you begin to expose others by doing what is your calling, then each one reach one, and then hopefully we can make a little bit of dent. But, I don't really have the answer to that. I wish I did. Then my wife would be wearing a meek in the summer.
No, I wouldn't.
Well, I think you started off talking about identity, and I think that's really the key. And I do think with youth, you have that opportunity to have them realize how important it is for them to develop that positive identity at such a young age. So when they get older, they don't have to identify with a story that probably isn't even their authentic story. It's just a story that they subscribe to because they want to be a part of something, To me, that's the key. I don't have all the answers, obviously, but I think identity development at a young age is so important.
With that, I want to thank two very important people in my life. First of all, Jody Burnett, that's my wife, the mother of my children, and just my everything. I want to acknowledge her. And then Dustin Tullis is our videographer, and he's been with me through thick and thin, and we've been emailing back and forth. We got other opportunities or whatever, and he kind of keeps me straight. Because I'll just go off into the wild blue yonder. What about this? What about that? Well, we don't have a budget, Dr. Burnett. So he reminds me to keep me right back down to earth. But we are going to make these videos, these four set videos, eventually will be on YouTube once Dustin figures out the formula. So we want to thank you for coming, and I appreciate it. Thank you.